Tonight's episode is not just drama, it's historic tea, the kind that reshapes reputations, rewrites timelines, and forces everyone watching to question what they thought they knew about the Braxton family. Because this story is no longer about a sweat-wiping moment, or a messy rumor, or even a Versus performance gone viral. Nah, this has evolved into a secret relationship timeline, two sisters allegedly sharing the same man, original receipts nobody ever revealed on camera, jealousy layered under sisterhood, and a bombshell confession that may not have even been meant for the public. And by the end of this video, you're going to ask the same question millions are whispering privately. Was Tamar really the villain? Or was she the first victim? Before we jump in, grab a snack, silence your phone, and don't blink. Because every time you think you figured it out, the truth flips again. Let's start with the moment that set the internet on fire. When Tamar Braxton stepped onto that Versus stage, it didn't feel like a guest appearance. It felt like an entrance, like she wasn't arriving to watch history, but to reclaim a chapter she never fully closed. She didn't hesitate, didn't scan the room, didn't look for cues. She walked straight toward Birdman like she already knew where her spot was, and every camera angle suddenly treated her like she was part of the headlining lineup, not the supporting cast. The moment she reached him, everything shifted. She didn't give the audience a polite wave or background smile. She leaned in confidently and wiped the sweat off Birdman's head with the precision of someone who'd done it long before the world ever saw it. And it wasn't just the gesture, it was the silence around it. No flinch, no laugh, no "what are you doing" energy from Birdman. He let it happen, like this was normal, like this was routine, like this was theirs. People froze instantly because that wasn't sister-in-law energy. It was, "This used to be my man, and my muscle memory refuses to retire" energy. And the internet smelled a buried storyline before a single tweet was even written. And what made it even louder was the empty space where Toni Braxton should have been, turning Tamar's actions from support to symbolism, and symbolism always leaves room for secrets that weren't supposed to surface in public lighting. The drama officially ignited with a single tweet. Not an article, not a podcast, not a rumor mill thread, but one blunt, unfiltered question that sliced straight through the calm. Why are you on stage with your sister's man like that? The internet didn't tiptoe, it lunged, because the wording wasn't gentle, curious, or speculative. It was accusatory, like the commenter already believed the behavior crossed a line and simply wanted Tamar to admit what everyone else was afraid to say out loud. Instead of letting it fade into the ocean of social media noise, Tamar snapped back quickly, responding publicly like someone who felt targeted, cornered, or misread, claiming she was simply holding things down for her sister and brother-in-law, as if she was the designated replacement and her presence was authorized, appropriate, and expected. But her tone didn't feel like clarification, it felt like she was defending her right to be there. And here's where everything got worse. Her response didn't close the conversation, it widened it. Because when someone insists they were filling in for a married sister, people naturally wonder why Tamar felt comfortable enough to step into a spot that wasn't hers to begin with, especially when the job description involved sweat-wiping intimacy, not microphone-passing professionalism. Fans began questioning the emotional undercurrent, asking whether her explanation was actually a subconscious confession, because replies given too fast often come from the place people fear the most, not the place where the truth lives. And that subtle difference turned curiosity into full-scale suspicion. Trying to shut down the speculation, Tamar posted a FaceTime clip showing herself sitting right next to Birdman while talking to Toni, like everything was normal, friendly, and harmless, almost as if the visual alone would erase the rising suspicion. But instead of cleaning up the narrative, it deepened the storyline because the video didn't feel like proof. It felt like damage control presented as casual comfort. People immediately pointed out that Tamar's body language in that moment wasn't defensive, awkward, or distant. It was relaxed, familiar, and confidently positioned, like she didn't feel the need to explain to Toni what she was doing next to Birdman, only to the public, which made viewers wonder who she was really trying to convince in the first place. And Birdman's reaction didn't help either. He didn't act surprised that a rumor needed clearing, didn't look uncomfortable being used as proof. He simply sat there, like someone who already knew the story behind the whispers and didn't feel pressured to correct or deny anything, almost as if silence protected more than honesty ever could. The attempt to ease tension accidentally created a new layer because fans noticed how smooth and natural the energy felt between Tamar and Birdman on that sofa. And when people see chemistry instead of innocence, denial becomes fuel, not closure, leaving the internet to quietly ask the question nobody dared to say out loud. Are we watching a cover-up? Or a confession disguised as confidence? Everything shifted the moment Brat stepped into the conversation and cracked open a timeline nobody saw coming, claiming that Tamar and Birdman weren't a rumor, weren't a fling, and weren't a backstage flirtation, but were actually together first way back in 2003, long before the public ever connected Toni Braxton's name to Birdman, turning the entire situation from inappropriate behavior into possible unfinished history. That revelation didn't just rewrite perception, it changed the motive. Because if Tamar and Birdman had a real relationship before Toni entered the picture, then Tamar's stage presence didn't look suspicious, it looked familiar. And suddenly the internet realized they might have been judging the wrong sister from the very beginning. Without knowing who actually came first, fans who initially dragged Tamar instantly paused, because the idea that Toni might have unknowingly dated a man who was part of Tamar's past created a storyline nobody was emotionally prepared to handle. And it introduced the possibility that the family knew the truth, but agreed to never publicly address it, leaving Tamar to carry a reputation that didn't match the real chronology. And just like that, Tamar didn't look like someone crossing a line. She looked like someone walking past an old door she once had keys to. And viewers began wondering if the real tension wasn't about cheating, but about who was allowed to claim history, and who was expected to pretend they never lived it. The pressure finally exploded when Tawanda decided she was done holding secrets, firing off a brutal on-camera accusation that Tamar didn't just date Birdman. She allegedly kept seeing him while Toni was involved, turning a private family wound into a public humiliation grenade that nobody was ready to catch, especially not under studio lighting and reality TV mic levels. Tamar's reaction didn't read like someone hearing a ridiculous lie, it read like someone who felt betrayed by the person exposing it. Because instead of instantly laughing it off or hitting a clean denial, she snapped emotionally first, and emotional reactions hit harder when the accusation sits a little too close to a buried truth. The mess didn't stop there. Tawanda didn't just accuse Tamar of stealing credit cards, she accused her of stealing men, using the word stole like she was describing a repeat behavior pattern, not a one-time mistake. And when someone throws that type of accusation without hesitation, it usually means they've rehearsed the line in their head long before saying it out loud. Fans watching didn't know whether this was a family argument gone nuclear or the moment karma finally broke the confidentiality contract. But when Toni froze like someone hearing confirmation, not random chatter, viewers started wondering if the real fight wasn't about loyalty, but about who owned the right to rewrite history first. Once the second rumor surfaced, the one hinting Tamar might have allegedly been involved with not just Birdman, but another man tied to Toni, the internet didn't treat it like a random comment. They treated it like a missing puzzle piece because two names attached to the same set of sisters doesn't sound like coincidence. It sounds like a pattern the family hoped would never resurface beyond whispered hallway arguments and deleted voicemail messages. Old blogs and archived gossip posts suddenly re-emerged like digital ghosts, claiming Tamar always had a taste for industry power men, and fans began to connect dots that nobody admitted. But nobody denied strongly enough either, especially not when every accusation seemed to echo an older rumor people once brushed off as jealousy, exaggeration, or fan fiction. And what made everything even harder to ignore was how calm Birdman remained through all of it. No defensive interview, no angry tweets, no clarifying PR statement. Just silence. And silence from a man with a history that loud makes people think the truth may not have been embarrassing, just inconvenient to confirm out loud. At that point, the storyline no longer sounded like a family misunderstanding. It sounded like a long-term agreement to protect reputations, even if it meant one sister took the public blame, while the other stayed comfortably unbothered, which made viewers wonder who in that family was really hurt, and who was simply protecting their brand. Fans started rewatching old Braxton Family Values episodes with new eyes, realizing the sisters' shady comments, awkward silences, and sudden emotional blow-ups might not have been random TV drama, but coded references to history they legally or emotionally couldn't say directly, especially when certain arguments felt like they were fighting about the past without ever mentioning it by name. Every sarcastic joke, every "you always do this" argument, every moment where Tamar felt ganged up on or misunderstood suddenly hit different. Because instead of looking like the dramatic sister craving attention, she started looking like the one carrying a truth the rest of them preferred, stayed behind production edits and non-disclosure clauses. Viewers also noticed how Toni rarely reacted with loud anger or public humiliation, choosing calm, detached silence instead, which didn't read like innocence but like someone who already processed something years ago and made peace with it privately, leaving the public to assume she was untouched by the entire situation. Meanwhile, Tamar's personality didn't look like random chaos anymore. It looked like the aftertaste of long-term resentment, the kind you don't develop from petty arguments, but from watching the world misunderstand you while you're not allowed to defend your own narrative, turning every outburst into a cry from the version of the story nobody else was brave enough to speak. By the time the internet pieced everything together, it didn't feel like a love triangle rumor anymore. It felt like a generational tension bomb that finally leaked through the cracks, proving that what fans saw on television was only the polished, camera-safe version of a story that may have been quietly burning long before any network ever pitched a season outline or signed a filming contract. The audience began realizing that every sister had a different truth, and instead of sitting down and aligning their stories, they seemed to protect their own emotional interpretations, meaning the real damage wasn't just about who dated who, but who felt betrayed, who stayed silent, and who suffered the public consequences while the rest chose strategic calmness over messy honesty. Tamar's bold behavior started to make sense through that lens, because she didn't move like someone hiding guilt. She moved like someone tired of pretending, while Toni acted like a woman who already lived through the healing process. And Tawanda behaved like someone who finally snapped under the pressure of carrying knowledge she never asked to hold in the first place. In the end, the situation stopped being about Birdman and became a conversation about loyalty, silence, timing, and narrative control, leaving the world to wonder whether the deepest damage came from what happened between the sisters or from the years they spent pretending it never did, while millions watched them smile through a reality script that didn't match their real-life scars. So now we're left with a story that refuses to settle, refuses to fade, and refuses to pick a clean villain. Because when timelines blur and emotions bleed, there is never just one person to blame. Only truths that were never spoken at the right time, and wounds that healed into silence instead of closure. Maybe the real scandal isn't about who dated who was there first, or who crossed a boundary that should have stayed guarded, but about how far a family will go to protect an image the public clings to, even if it means burying the parts that could have explained every argument, every tear, and every breakdown fans mistook for attitude or ego. And until one of them decides to speak without filters, contracts, or cameras, the world will only ever know pieces, while the full story stays locked behind memory, pride, and the fear of what honesty might permanently destroy. Because sometimes the secret isn't explosive. It's the fallout that terrifies them. So remember this: in Hollywood, silence isn't innocence, confidence isn't proof, and history doesn't disappear just because someone else got the spotlight. It simply waits for the right moment to resurface. And when it does, it never arrives quietly.